None of the names you can remember?
No, sir.
Nicola Blackwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I come to you first, Mr. Crompton? We had some rather disturbing evidence from a Home Office researcher in private evidence. She was asked to do a report into what was then considered child prostitution between 2001 and 2002. At the time, this was labelled as inaccurate and exaggerated, and she was treated with hostility and anger by South Yorkshire Police. I'm using the words of Professor Jay from her report. However, Professor Jay also confirms the findings of her report and calls the treatment of this researcher deeply troubling. In addition to what has been published in the report, the researcher told us that she was threatened in her car at night by 2 police officers who told her, wouldn't it be a bad thing if some of these men, which she explained she meant these perpetrators, found out where you lived. And she feared for her life. And all the files that were related to her report were removed over a weekend from the Risky Business office. In evidence, her and Dr. Andrew Heal and Jayne Senior, who was at the time the head of Risky Business, said that they could name all 5 individuals who had the key code and the key for the filing cabinet and could have accessed those files, but that there had been no police investigation into what had happened, both in terms of the harassment of the researcher, but also in terms of the removal of the file. The only thing which had happened was that Jayne Senior recalls one phone call in 2013 after a report which had come out in the Times written by Andrew Norfolk. So I wondered, firstly, what progress had been made in investigating the disappearance of the files, given that there is a witness, the caretaker, who apparently saw a number of people coming in and removing those files, and also that apparently there's a very limited number of people who could have accessed them. And secondly, that the Home Office researcher said she would like the harassment against her, which sounds very severe, to be properly investigated by the police.
The question of the harassment, it's the first time I've ever heard that, and of course we will look into that because it sounds like a serious matter, so we will deal with that. In relation to the missing files, since this has been raised, we have been going back through our records and can't find any mention, any report, any computer printout within our records of that happening. Now, I'm entirely accepting that it has happened, but you've asked me, what have we done? We've been going back to see, is there a report or some further information about this, and at the moment we can't find any.
Could you just clarify, do you mean you have no record of the files being removed, or you have no record of the 2013 phone call and any subsequent activity? The
2013 phone call, that's the first time that's ever been mentioned to me, so I wasn't aware of that. We cannot find any reference within our records to removal of the files being reported to us or involving South Yorkshire Police.
So what action are you going to take now to make sure that those individuals who have given evidence to us, who for 15 years have been trying to get justice for these victims, who have been disbelieved and treated exceedingly badly, are going to be treated as though, A, they are believed by your police officers, and secondly, that those police officers who treated them in that way are properly disciplined?
I think that probably brings us to the arrangements so far for getting all of this investigated independently, because I think probably the best way to go about this is for this to be handled outside South Yorkshire Police, so that the public have got confidence that these matters are dealt with appropriately. So I'm in ongoing negotiation with the National Crime Agency, who are at this stage in principle willing to take ownership of such an inquiry to give it that level of independence. And I think the matters that you raise, clearly serious matters, would rightly fall within the ambit of that investigation so that it was done independently.
And how long do you think that that will take, given that these individuals have been waiting for 15 years
It will be as fast as we possibly can. We've identified a possible retired Chief Constable to run the investigation. I accept entirely that on the one hand we would want to be seen to move quickly on this. On the other, I have to balance that with the need for anything that's done to be, in the eyes of the public, seen to be independent. So we will progress it as quickly as we can, but I think it's better progressed independently.
Will you personally undertake to ensure that the very serious issues relating to the Home Office researcher are passed on to the NCA? Because I am deeply shocked by what I've heard, and those activities must be included in the Passover.
You have my absolute assurance that they will be passed on to the National Crime Agency, yes.
Thank you. Can I just ask some questions of Mr Hughes? Mr Hughes, is it right that you were Chief Constable from 2004 to 2011?
Yes.
And you claim that you only read the reports last night?
The 2010 report I'm familiar with, but the other three reports, for the first time I've seen them as far as I can remember, is last night.
Okay, because obviously in Professor Jay's report it gives the main findings of the 2006 report, which was published by a Dr Heal, who was funded by the South Yorkshire report,
Yep.
by the South Yorkshire Police. And the findings were that in Rotherham there is an established sexual exploitation scheme, very organised, involving systematic sexual and physical violence against young women, that young women are being trafficked to other towns and cities, predominantly in the north. And it also includes the finding that there was a high-profile media campaign about trafficking from Eastern Europe.
Yes.
So are you telling me that you weren't aware of a high-profile
No,
media
that's to do with the UK Human Trafficking Centre, which we established in South Yorkshire. This is why, if I had known, I am not uninterested or disinterested in these hideous crimes. When we had evidence after an operation in Sheffield and another campaign that there were large numbers of women and young people being trafficked into the area, we actually took the lead in setting up the United Kingdom Human Trafficking Centre.
So this report links the serious and systematic sexual exploitation of young girls with gun running and drug running in Rotherham, and links it to trafficking to the wider area, which I would say is quite a serious threat risk to Rotherham. And you said earlier in your evidence that most of your meetings were about budgetary matters, but I would imagine that you had other meetings about threat assessment. Would this issue not have been raised in sort of risk assessment and threat assessment meetings?
To the best of my memory, Rotherham's problems were about burglary and domestic crime, domestic violence, car crime, those issues. I would, I'm sure, have remembered if we had a serious problem brought to the fore on this regard. This is an intelligence report. I do not recall seeing it. The creation of the United Kingdom Human Trafficking Centre has been a matter of pride, and it's now part of the National Crime Agency.
And what about during 2008 to 2010 when Operation Central was ongoing?
Yes.
You weren't aware of that?
Well, I was aware that Operation Central was dealing with a group of offenders who had been arrested.
And you weren't briefed on that in the context in which that...
Not in the scale and scope of all the other problems that we now see are coming up.
But when you found out that such a large-scale operation was necessary, did you not ask for briefing from those involved and speak to the victims and try and understand the background?
I did not.
You didn't. Did you meet any of the victims involved in Operation Central?
No.
Did you meet any of the police, the specialist police who were involved in the case? The SIO?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge?
No.
You don't remember?
No.
Did you meet the senior investigating officer who was running Operation Central?
I'm on oath. I cannot remember.
Right.
Thank you.